Hello artists, and welcome back to Art at Home with Mrs. Kellogg. Well, for today's lesson, I'm going to teach you about a visual journal and how to start one. And I'm going to show you how to start your first visual journal page. Now, meet me over at my workspace and I'm going to tell you more about the art lesson and the materials you'll need for today. I'm going to start by telling you what a visual journal is. Think of a visual journal this way. It's your own personal art book, and each page expresses your unique creative ideas. So some artists think of their visual journal as their art diary, and they might express their feelings on each of the visual journal pages, or they might express their ideas, or they might even just want to have fun and experiment with different art supplies. And sometimes even a word can inspire artists to create a visual art page. This artist, Baron Story, created a visual journal and published it as a book. So that's the cover. And then if you look at his pages, they're just expressing ideas, and he's having fun creating different shapes and drawing and painting. So really, a visual journal can be about anything. Okay. Now I want to show you how you can put together your own visual journal book. You can cut pages of the same size and just staple on the side, and then you have your journal. And then each page you can create something unique, ideas, feelings you can express on these pages. Another way is if you have a sketchbook, use that as your visual journal. Some artists will create visual journal pages and then they keep them in a folder, and then that's their visual journal. So there's many ways to create a visual journal. You could even take your art pages and either staple them on the side, or you could even punch a hole and tie a ribbon through them, or yarn or string to connect them, and then that could become your visual journal. So there's many ways to do this, but all visual journals start with a page. I'm going to show you some examples of visual journal pages. So remember our doodle lesson and our doodle video? See, you could just make pages of doodles and different facial expressions if you like. Or as I said before, it could all start with a word as your inspiration. And you'll notice you can use all different types of art supplies. Now I'm going to talk to you about the materials you will need for your first visual journal page. You can use any materials from your art kit, and if all you want to use is a pencil, that's fine. Let me tell you about some of the materials that I'm going to use. So first, I'm going to start by watercoloring my paper. So I'm going to use some watercolors. I'll need a cup with water and a paintbrush. I'm also going to use some paper towels. And remember, I'm always having my art mat down or newspaper before I start my art project. The other thing I might like to do is collage a word or maybe some pictures onto my visual journal art page. So I'm going to need a scissors, and I'm also going to need glue. And remember, I can always tear the pictures or words out. And I'm going to use a magazine for that. You can also use an old calendar, or if you have some painted paper, you can use some of that. Now would be a great time to pause the video, gather the materials that you want to use for your first visual journal page, and meet me back here and we'll get started. Did you get your materials? Great, then let's get started. So here's a couple of examples of visual journal pages. Now, I'm going to show you one way to start, but there's a lot of different ways to start. Once you've decided the direction of your page, you can either just start drawing on your paper, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint watercolor on my paper first. So artists will say I'm going to prepare the paper first before I add other art elements to my page. I also recommend that if you're not sure what certain colors make, to have another paper and just experiment with color and mixing colors and see what happens. See what different colors, when you put them together, what they make. So the first thing I'm going to do, which is a lot of fun, is instead of wetting my brush and going into the paint, first I'm actually going to get my whole paper wet. Now, the paper you use, you want to make sure it's thick enough to paint on if you're going to do this. Because if the paper's too thin, it tears easily and you can make a hole in it. Okay, so I'm going to use this magenta color, and remember, I'm only using the tip. I don't want to scoop or dig. Now, the fun thing about this is when I put my paint down, it starts going into the water and creates these really interesting designs. And I'm just going to spread it out. Okay, now the next fun thing I love to do is, and you can tell I'm going to tip the paper, so that's why I want to make sure you have that art mat or newspaper underneath. So this is really fun because you can make some really interesting designs. Okay, now I want to add another color, so I clean my brush. I have a paper towel, so I test if it's clean. And then I'm going to use some yellow and probably orange, because I know orange, yellow mix really well, because red and yellow make orange, so I know it's going to make a nice bright color. So this is fun because it's like I'm making an abstract painting. And for that one, I'm happy with it. I'm going to put a little more. Okay. So now I'm happy with that. I can tilt it and make some more designs, but I like what's happening there. So I'm going to stop, let that dry, and then I'm going to come back and start adding more to my visual journal page. Now that my paint's dry, I'm ready to add more to my visual journal. So here's an example. So you can start with pencil, but I'm actually just going to start with marker. And on this one, I started with a word. So if that inspires you, can start that way as well. Okay, but what I'm going to do, instead of putting the words that I've chosen, I think I'm going to wait to put those on. And I'm just going to start with some simple shapes and connecting them. So I'm overlapping, that means I want my shapes to touch. So I want to show you also a couple of ideas. You just want to start with shapes where it doesn't look like anything, and you just want to work with pencil or just a black marker. See how you can just start connecting all these different shapes, and maybe just start that way and change the sizes of the shapes that you're making. Make some small. And notice how I'm touching and connecting all of these shapes. If you're a person who likes rectangles or squares, you can start this way. So see how I'm getting it to touch, and then I'm just going to connect them. And then as you're working, so you can decide which ones maybe you want to make lighter, which ones you want to make darker. And see what happens if you angle your lines. If this line goes this way, this line goes this way. If this line goes this way, this line goes this way. And see, now I've got a cube. Okay, so you can just start your visual journal page that way. Another idea is, think of it, this is kind of fun. Remember our doodle people? So see, you're doing the same thing. You're overlapping. You're connecting. Now, I don't want to draw through on this because I'm working with a marker and I can't erase, but remember, you can do that. You can draw through things, you just have to remember to erase. And that's another type of overlapping. So you can just make your journal page of doodle people if you want to start your journal page that way. So there's many ways to start your visual journal page. And again, artists might express feelings in their journal pages. They might experiment with art supplies, or if they have any creative ideas, or they may just sit down and start, as I showed you before, just connecting shapes. I'm going to continue working on my visual journal page. Now it's time for you to start your visual journal page. I hope you got a lot of great ideas for how to start your visual journal page and put together your visual journal. I look forward to seeing what you create. Now, I want you to always remember, when you're creating art, to relax, have lots of fun, and keep creating.